It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Yep, Thor's older brother is here to answer your burning questions.
Younger brother.
Younger brother.
Younger, better-looking brother.
Much younger, better-looking brother is here to answer all of your burning questions. South Africa has been on COVID-19 lockdown now. Forget this. 678 days and counting.
Mad.
Wow, and while things certainly feel more relaxed and more normal, if you will, than they have since the initial hard lockdown, certainly, we are still in the throes of a global pandemic as reports of another Omicron-driven surge obviously cause concern. It's time for another edition of our favorite feature where we focus on the unconventional side of law. It's called So Now What? And we are calling once again upon the legal guidance of our friend and expert in law, the Director at Legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, to answer the question. South Africa has officially exited the fourth wave of COVID-19 pandemic. So now what?
So now what?
One of these chats where I always feel like we need to kind of have a disclaimer saying you're not a doctor.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not.
I was about to say, we're going to hear from the good Dr. Emil after this about, about the medical side.
We will get that balance, but obviously the rules are there. And I jokingly, I've been talking about my son because he's got a lesson in rules and laws through this COVID experience.
Okay.
Because it's, and from the man at the top, he even calls our dear president Mr. COVID, because that's how he kind of relates to him. So we've... Alert level 1, and nick of time for New Year's Eve, we were able to do away with the curfew, one major plus.
Yeah.
Where do we stand right now? What are the major kind of parameters?
Okay, so it's good we're talking about this week and not last week, because we've just had some change in the regulations. So the government has dropped some of our... We are still on level 1, but some of the regulations have dropped. You now, if you get COVID, you only need to quarantine for 7 days and not 10 days. If you are exposed to someone with quarantine, you no longer need to quarantine. If you're exposed to someone with COVID, you no longer need to quarantine unless you show symptoms. Then you need to quarantine.
Then go get
and
tested,
if you get COVID, this is the crazy one. If you get COVID, but you don't show symptoms, you don't need to quarantine. So the government has realized that a lot of the population is either vaccinated or has had COVID. There's a lot of immunity out there. And touch wood, and again, we'll hear from the good doctor, but it seems like, from a policy point of view, we are preparing for the end of this pandemic.
Can we believe?
I mean, can
we rest our hopes on this?
No, definitely not, right? Things can shift all the time, and the next variant, I was listening to a podcast on it this morning, the next variant could be worse than this last one, we don't know. But, you know, with everything with this pandemic, it's been about government trying to react to the circumstances.
And I suppose limit the economic fallout from the impact of all of these policies and these decisions. All of this being said, there are still some guidelines, parameters, rules. What do we definitely need to adhere to at the moment?
Cool. So we are still in alert level 1, right? We're still in this pandemic thing. So you still need to wear your mask when you go out in public. You still need to adhere to the gathering regulations, and gatherings can't be more than 1,000 people indoor, 2,000 people outdoor. So there are still regulations out there that people need to be aware of, like the face masks.
You've set the target. There are comedians out there going, I need to get it. Can I please get 1,000 people at an event here? Because I can. I'm allowed to. Let's just sell tickets. It kind of felt like, in a way, obviously economically there was a massive fallout, but to a certain extent, maybe the vaccination kind of drive triggered this in some extent. We felt like our human rights have been trodden on non-stop by certain things, forcing me to stop drinking, forcing me to stop smoking, forcing me to do all these things where it was previously my choice. Is this a reality? Is it going to continue? Are we likely to see these kind of restrictions come into place again?
So look, we are still in this alert level. So we're still not back to, our full rights and the regular situation of our rights. Are we likely to go back to a situation where there's no cigarettes or no drinking? I'm not in government, it's hard to know. You would hope that all government policies are rational. I don't know if the cigarette one was rational in the first place. But from my opinion, it's unlikely, right? The economic fallout has been huge. We are preparing for the end of this pandemic. And what should start to happen is government should start to return our rights to where they were before, if they no longer need them from a safety and public health point of view. So it is very unlikely. If it does return, then we do have something to worry about, either from a government point of view or from a health point of view.
Yeah, so start looking at your health, I think, is a good way to start. Just stop smoking if you are smoking,
that's a
or
very
maybe
good point.
dial back on the drinking. Something I'm interested in, obviously, in light of what's going on in the UK, as they consider whether they are going to force their health workers to take the vaccine. How would something like that play out in South Africa? I'd like Eitan to think about that. We are talking about COVID-19 right now. What are the restrictions? What are the new freedoms? Where do we stand? But of course, we need to balance out the legal discussion with a medical one.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Now we just have to give you advice that is as epic as that music, but we will endeavour to do so as we continue our discussion with lawyer and director at legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, as he breaks down the legal ins and outs of COVID-19, the pandemic, the current regulations here in the country, and of course the divisive issue of the vaccination.
Yes.
It's crazy. It has polarized a very polarized world yet again. Mandatory vaccines. It feels like on one side of me, because to be honest, I never had a flu vaccine.
Okay.
Never ever, because I didn't feel like I needed it. I would never get really sick. So when the vaccine for COVID came along, it was like, well, do I need to, do I not need to? And then it starts, as soon as someone's telling you to do it, then it feels like your rights are being infringed on. But companies do actually now have a right to be able to do that, or do they? Where do we stand with companies saying you have to get vaccinated if you want to work here?
Okay, so according to the regulations, companies can enforce mandatory vaccinations. So you can say, listen, in order for you to work here, you need to be vaccinated. It was still a question mark, and then the CCMA was asked to look at a matter like this, where someone was fired for not being vaccinated, and they ruled that it was fair for this person to be fired because they couldn't effectively do their job. Might have been a public-facing job, and they couldn't effectively do the job without being vaccinated. So the CCMA declared it was fair, but it hasn't actually been looked at by the Labour Court. So in order to get a final judgment on it, we would need it to be looked at by the Labour Court or a High Court. But you know, from the regulations and according to the South African law and precedent as it stands, it's perfectly within a company's right to terminate someone's employment if they are not vaccinated.
That being said, what do companies or employers need to be aware of if they're going to do this? What kind of backlash can they expect, do you think?
Well, I mean, employees still have rights, right? So, you know, an employee can still, push back against the company, and the company would need to explain their rationale. They might need to send that person for medical advice, or try create a scenario in which they could get tested or not.
Everything in their power to lead the person.
But if they can't, if you are a sales clerk in a shop and you're not vaccinated, I can't see how a shop owner can allow you to do your job and put the customers in danger, which is very clear at this point that if you're not vaccinated, you are causing a danger to yourself and other people. I can't see how that would, the law in any would ever allow that to be fair, to allow a situation which puts people in danger.
And following our cue from the rest of the world, we're kind of going all in with the vaccine now. I think that seems to be where we're at. I just want to go to Burning Man. I just want to get out there and party with my friends.
I've actually been to Burning Man.
I know.
Very fun.
Regularly, yeah. It's amazing. But no, we love these outdoor concerts. We love being able to connect with other people. We love being able to go to events because we are inherently social. Totally. Someone stopping me at the door saying, where's your vaccination stamp, your badge? Are event organisers legally allowed to do that? Can they expect some pushback? What do they need to be aware of if they are hosting an event and forcing you to be vaccinated to be there?
So the event organisers do not have, they are not forced at this point to force people to get vaccinated, but they are perfectly within their rights to ask people if they're vaccinated and to require that as a rule. My personal opinion, I think that's a great rule. I think they should do away with the hand washing, do away with the contract tracing, do away with asking if you've been on a cruise ship, and all they need to do is ask if you've been vaccinated. We could get back to some semblance of normal life. But it is not a rule to force event organisers to do that. But if they want to do it, right of admission reserved, they're allowed. They can say to you, you're only allowed to come in if you're wearing pants. They can say you're only allowed to come in if you're...
It's my party.
It's my party.
I get that completely. the flip side of that coin,
Yes.
if I feel in this country that has the most amazing rights
Yes.
attached to our democracy, if I
Yes.
feel like my freedom of movement, for instance, is being infringed upon, or another one of my basic human rights is being infringed upon because I'm being told to
Yes.
get vaccinated, do I have recourse?
Yes. Well, one of the rights that unvaccinated people have is the right to remain silent. I wish more of them would choose that right. But yeah, I mean, listen, everyone's got, we've got rights in order to, if you are unvaccinated, you have a right to question these things, you have a right to talk about it, you have freedom of speech, it's totally within your rights.
Start a petition.
There are certain circumstances where someone who's unvaccinated could force himself into a situation that they could go to an event if they can prove that they are COVID negative. So, there are some areas that if you are unvaccinated and want to stay that way, that you can manage to live in society. But, I mean, at this point, come on, guys. It's just like, it's time.
If Novak couldn't do it, what hope do we have?
Very nice.
That's just basically the bottom line. But thank you so much for helping us navigate these murky waters. I know we're in a transitional phase at the moment, which means that every day I expect we're going to be getting new revelations. I know that within creches, for instance, next week, Monday, masks are off. These are good steps. These are scary steps. How do you feel about where we sit right now when it comes to COVID-19 and the pandemic? Well, really interesting revelations on the medical front. So let's continue that discussion right now.